Well, hello, my friends, and welcome to Art Nerds. Welcome back. This is the podcast where we get to talk to our nerdy friends about their art. My name is Michael Bryan, and today I have with me on the other microphone, after many, many emails and messages back and forth, I finally get her at the table. This is my friend Erin Kaufman. How are you?
Oh, I'm doing really well. Thanks for having me.
Oh, my pleasure. I'm glad we finally,
yes.
after what, 3 weeks of this?
Oh my goodness. Yeah, so many back and forth, like the day of, oh no, I can't make it.
Yeah,
like
and on both our parts, it's been a long, crunchy semester. So anyway,
it's busy.
It has been busy, but I'm glad you made it. I am so glad you made it.
Thank you.
Okay, Erin, tell us, what is your art?
I have a lot of different arts. I would say right now, the one that I've been focusing a lot on is actually the D&D campaigns that I'm part of, whether I'm playing or DMing.
Yes, D&D nerd, fine. Everybody I talk to says everybody's a little bit into it, but you're the first one that says that's my art.
I'm very into it. Yes.
How so? I mean,
well, gosh, I mean, I don't know. It's a couple of years now. And to be honest, it's actually kind of a newer sort of art that I've been really diving into. My sister got me into it because she started watching the very famous Critical Role, and she actually just like randomly mentioned it to my family one day, my younger brother and like his group of friends, and they really are not like your stereotypical D&D people. So she kind of just threw it out there like, oh, if you guys ever wanted to do a campaign, we could. And they were like, yeah, let's go to Enchantment Alley. Like, let's buy, like the source books. Let's do all this kind of stuff. And so we like all did it right then and there. And then we kind of dove into it. And they have since sort of like fallen out of it. But her and I have just dived right in. Like, we just love it.
That's funny because my youngest, Grace, she went to Eastern for college in her sophomore year. She came back one spring break and says, okay, I'm doing this with you guys.
Yep.
And she helped us roll up characters and do a little one shot. And that was about 5 years ago. And as you can see, I am now.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. I didn't even see all those as I came in.
I am up to my nostrils in it as well.
Yeah.
So
rivals our collection for sure.
Yeah. Is Dungeons and Dragons an art form to you? And in what way? Because I mean, I have an answer for that for myself.
Right. It is for me. So as someone who has studied theater and been really into theater all my life as well, it's 100% an art form for me because it feels very similar to that in the sense of I get to act a character. I get to learn about this character. And I feel like I'm pulling a lot of similarities between them. Like when I work on a character in a show that I'm in, I always relate it to myself somehow. And I feel like most actors and actresses do that.
Right.
And so when you're creating a character, no matter what you do and no matter how opposite you try and make it, you're gonna have part of you in it, because you are playing it. Like,
right. Your personality always bleeds in.
Yes.
So Erin is also an actor.
Yes.
And quite a talented actor.
Oh, thank you.
No, I will not joke about that. So yeah, that makes perfect sense that that art form bleeds in.
Absolutely.
Now you said you also dungeon master. You also run games.
Yes. I'm running one right now, and I want to do more because the one that I'm doing it has a source book, so it's like based off of a world that's already created, but I'm creating the story of it.
Right. Okay.
So like there'll be maps and like all these kinds of like locations and things, and some characters that they give you like already you could use this, but then all of that, the rest of that I get to make up. And I like that a lot. It's it's helpful for my brain to have like structure because I don't know if I have the capacity to create. I know I have the capacity to create something wholly on my own, but it feels so overwhelming for my brain to focus on.
Agreed. Yeah, because we did a campaign out of the Eberron setting.
Oh yeah. Love
and
that.
It was actually a 2-year campaign. But if you've read Eberron, that setting, it's massive,
so big,
so big, and we didn't get to,
Do you like? You feel like you do?
It.
Yeah, you feel like you're getting to the tip of the iceberg with it. Like it just is. There's so much, and it's really cool though because the one that I'm doing is the Wild Mount, which is the very like I said before, Critical Role's Matthew Mercer's world.
Right.
And like he has so much material in there, but I love how much is just left up to you. And
Yeah.
already I'm very well versed in watching these as well, but like already there's so many things that I'm like, I liked this, but I'm going to change this and I'm going to do that,
Absolutely.
like, and I'm going to do it this way. And this fits my story better, and that
Right.
sort of
So
thing.
there's the art.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I would say the art is 100% creation. Like it is just, I am someone who loves to storytell, which is probably what drew me into acting the most as well.
Right.
And so with something like this, I can just create my own story, but then you're also watching so many other people's stories unfold because the players, I have 6 players in my campaign, and they each have their own individual story. And it's so cool to like try and tie them all together.
Right.
Or like focus on this one right now. And like, oh, they give me this tidbit about their backstory, so I'm going to go with it that way. And like, it's so cool.
So do you consider yourself a writer?
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, it's one of the art forms that I've enjoyed before. I mean, I used to write like a lot of fan fiction actually, and then like my own stories. Like I've always been like a writer probably since I was like 14 or 15. But I like this sort of form because I don't have to type everything. I don't have to really have it all laid out in front of me. There's a lot of ad lib with it, but then that becomes part of the story.
Interesting. Yeah, because I feel the same way. I'm not a writer. I've tried. I'm not good at it.
Really?
I can't do it. I'm much more of a physical thing person. But
Didn't you write that play that we were in at Parkland?
which one?
The Kazam?
I did not write that.
No, okay.
That was somebody. That was
a different person. I thought that, yeah, man, that was so long ago. I've been doing theater a long time.
okay. That was 6 years ago.
Yeah. Well, okay, that's not that long.
But
it's a whole pandemic ago. So
6 years. That's a significant amount. No, I'm not a good writer. But what I enjoy about like DMing is it's like you said, it's the storytelling.
Yeah.
But I love the the joint storytelling, the group mind of the whole thing. So it doesn't matter what I spit out, something more interesting comes back tenfold. And
absolutely.
I'm like, oh, and I don't know if you had that kind of same experience.
I 100% agree. And I think that's one of my most fun, kind of like what I was saying about ad lib. It's one of the reasons I love that so much is because you can have this whole, and I'm sure every DM would say this, you can have this whole plan laid out in front of you, and inevitably your characters are going to go the opposite direction. Or they're going to find that one little loophole that you just didn't think of. And so you're like, okay, I have to roll with this now.
Right. The last session we had, I had 4 or 5 pages of, I'm trying to get it so it just bullet points. This. Nope. They decided to make up buildings and rooms that I hadn't even thought about.
Yep. Well, and I've come to the point now where I have so much like planned out and then so much of the big picture that when we're in sessions, I have been telling them for weeks now that I'm like, you guys have got to start taking notes on these things because I will not remember. Like if it's some random character I made up in the moment, I don't know.
Yeah, write their name down because I will not.
I'm not going to remember it.
So you don't keep copious notes on your...
Man, if I did, I don't think I would get anything done. But I have copious notes in like very different formats. Like I've started to create like all these different, because like I said before, everybody has a different story. So now I have my own document for like each different character and how it's going to relate to the bigger picture. And now I'm just starting to have like too many things, too many eggs in the basket.
Yeah. How long is your campaign been going on?
So it's been going on for, it will be 2 years in August, actually, because we started during the pandemic, which is very interesting, actually. I will say that, going on a little tangent there, it's one of the reasons why I was one of the very lucky few who was somehow blessed during the pandemic, because I had so much time on my hands and I had always wanted to DM, but I had never done it. And I had all of a sudden all this free time. And so I just dove into it and I reached out to people. We got, and I actually had a player who started with us, but he had to leave because he was too busy. And now I added 2 different ones and have since added 1 more. So it's like, it started as 5. started as 5, then it added as 5. Now it's crazy.
Right.
Of a lot of players. But yeah, we started, our first official session was August of 2020. And we don't meet very often because we do have a lot of busy schedules.
Yeah.
Rarely we get to meet more than 2 times a month, but it's still so much fun every time.
Twice a month for 2 years, though, is still...
It's a big time commitment.
It is a big time commitment.
Yeah.
And in terms of the creativity and the writing and the storytelling, your story is huge at this point.
Yeah, and I feel like we've barely even touched on some of the stuff. Like I felt like just recently we've gotten into some of the really nitty gritty. And now I'm like, hey,
finally gonna get to the story.
Because we did start. For those who don't know, with the source book that I started, we started at level 1. The very beginning you can be, basically. And the adventure, there was a starting adventure in the book that takes you from level 1 to level 3.
Okay.
And then from there, you get to branch on your own. So I had that much written out for me, in the sense of like they had a dungeon already made. They had, like the items you can get and that sort of thing. And it was from that point on that probably took us a good like month or 2 to get through. But then from that point on, it was all us.
It was all you. Yeah. That's fun. That is so much fun. What really turned you on about it? I mean, I see how it taps into your other creative outlets. And of course, being an actor and a theater person, you can't help but see the parallels.
Yes.
But is there something...
Like something in particular?
Something, I don't know, or maybe even just oddly personal about it. And if you can choose not to answer this.
Yeah. No, I love the personal. I think that for me... storytelling in particular is a very good sense of who I am, which is very weird to say because oftentimes, and I use this when I talk about acting as well, when you're acting or storytelling, like in the sense you're being someone else, but as I said before, you're always bringing part of you into it. And I feel like I am never more me than when I am creating or telling a story and really like getting into it, whether that's getting into the voices of a character or whether that's like what's their motivation behind this and that and the other thing. And I also just love to bring people together. And so having the sense of, like I said before, all these different stories that you're tying into one. And it's kind of a running joke that D&D is sort of like tabletop therapy. But I genuinely think it actually can be really helpful as far as the community that you have. And, if you're playing with the right people. And and I've seen that in my campaign, at least. Like I just recently, we kind of had to deal with this my sister is in the campaign with me, and she's like my absolute best friend. And something really major happened with her character, but it turned out to be really bad for the rest of the party. And so she was telling me how she had to deal with this. She was like, I have to deal with this. Like these characters are mad at me, not the people. And we were like, yeah, like, but it's kind of interesting because you have to like get around that kind of stuff with people and be like, no, like I'm not mad at you, I'm perfectly fine with you, but like the character's pissed, like, and it's so cool. You see all these different dynamics with people, and I love that about humans in general. So it's always drawn me to it.
I will completely 100% agree with you because there's something like even being on stage and it's going really well and the audience is with you. And your fellow actors, everybody is just on point. And
yep. There's a feeling when when you're just, and it's so hard to describe, but when you're doing it right and when you feel like you're in that moment and everybody else is too, you just get this like,
there's this
moment, this feeling.
There's this high that you just cannot. Yeah. And it's always so fleeting.
Yep. Yes.
So yes.
Yeah.
I think you've said it, but I completely.
I will mention too that I think something that drew me in before I officially started DMing too. Like I'd been in a couple of campaigns, like I was playing with a few, but I mentioned this before, and I'll probably mention them a lot because they're integral for me. But I remember watching an episode of Critical Role that was so intense, and I watched this player because my sister had described it to me, like what was going on, the background, and I watched this player. It's like one of their very ending campaigns, and I watched the player make a decision, and you can see it in his face. He had this decision planned this whole entire time, and then something crazy happens, and now he has to go a different direction, and you can see it in his face when he like loses this joy because he was going to help another character. It's this long story, but like I just loved watching that real human moment because they're acting, but I watched that like, oh no, he's genuinely upset. And it was so cool to be able to see that kind of emotion like coming from, what people regard as play.
Right.
Like, but it's so genuine and so human.
That's interesting because it's suddenly I'm aware that things like Critical Role and playing Dungeons and Dragons or any tabletop game like that, you're not just if you're watching somebody else play, you're watching both the actor and the character at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
So there's this kind of double layer of emotional quality, and sometimes they mesh, sometimes they don't.
So true. And it's that, there's many different like forms to enjoy that sort of stuff. Like I know some people that just strictly listen to it like as podcasts, and that's absolutely great too. You still get a lot of that character stuff, but there is something about watching them do it. And again, my sister and I have actually been to a couple of their live performances.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
we've been to like 3, I think now.
You're hardcore fans.
Oh yeah. And it is a whole, it's that feeling you were talking about earlier. It's a whole other level being in that room with all of these people that love the same thing and they're like all enjoying it, but you're like watching other people do it. It's really interesting. It's very fun though.
Yeah, but but for me, it's the idea of you're watching, like you said, there's nothing more honest than what's going on behind the eyes.
Yep. Because you can tell these people like love the characters and they really got into it. And again, I think it's part of them, because you put yourself into a character. And now having played a couple characters like this, I can understand where it would be devastating to lose a character.
Yeah. I remember the first campaign I ever played as a character, somebody else DM'd it. And about 5 or 6 sessions in, one of the other characters was killed off. And we're all just sitting around in dumb silence for...
It's like, wait, can I do this? Can I bring it? Oh, nope. It's like, it's gone.
Yeah, it's like there was nothing we could do.
Yep.
It's just a stupid game, but man, you get so attached to these.
And there is that level of like... Because of course the DM can always do what they want, but when you're playing by the rules and you're doing some of these stuff, there is this level of like, oh yes, my character could die at any moment. Yeah, so you do have that little fear.
But I think it's fascinating, and I'm guilty of it myself. But getting so involved and so hung up with these avatars of ourselves,
yes.
I think it's so amazing.
I know my sister runs a campaign, and I played the character that I've first ever played, and I'm so attached to him, and I'm like, he can't die. Like I told her, I was like, he can't die, but of course we could.
Yeah, he could. Yeah, yeah. That first campaign, I still have the character sheet. I will play him again somewhere, sometime. Yeah, because I'm so attached to him.
Yeah.
So Matt Mercer, Critical Role, all that crowd, a big inspiration for you.
Yes.
Are there any other heroes or muses or?
Funny enough, I don't think he would be so surprised if I said this, but my dad actually used to play D&D.
Old school?
Yes. Yeah. Like he used to play, I think Dean Geiken.
I know Dean.
They used to play together.
Oh, really?
They went to high school together and everything. And but this is so funny because this is during that time when like, and they come from this very small town, and this is from that time of I always call it the Satanic Panic.
Yeah,
in the sense of like, with the D&D is the devil, like it's and so
devil.
He, because it talks about demons and things, and he, we grew up very religious, and they like that was never anything that was on our radar. Like it wasn't even something we were allowed to like. We weren't even allowed to watch Pokemon, all this kind of stuff. And only recently, in these past years, did we all, obviously becoming our own people. And once we started getting into it, it's been so funny to watch my dad watch us play, because he said it to us. He was like, never would I have thought that like my kids would be into D&D, because I loved it when I was young, but then we were so against it. And then he's like, now it's so fun watching you guys play. And we actually did, it was 2 years ago, for Christmas, my sister found us like a tiny little one shot. And then we just like rolled these random characters and just played for like 2 or 3 hours. And it was so fun to watch my dad play.
So your dad played.
Yes. Yeah.
And then he didn't.
And he doesn't anymore. Yeah. Like he hasn't. And he has told me that he maybe wants to show up as like a one character in my campaign sometime. And I've told him that would be so fun.
Yeah.
But yeah. So he did not play for a really long time. And so in that sense, I don't know if I'd call him like a hero in it, but it is very cool to watch D&D like do so many different things for so many different people. Because like I said, when we did that Christmas little one shot, it was like I saw this whole other side of my dad that I had never seen before, and he was so playful and like so fun and just absolutely loved it. And I was like, yeah, I can see where this would have been you in like your prime. Like it would have.
I would want you. Yeah, I want to get him in more.
Yes, exactly. Me too. I want to be like, hey, like come join us more often. Yeah, just do a family campaign. And it's funny to see my mom was not about it. She was like, no, like I don't. She felt very self-conscious, like acting or portraying something else, and she was like, no, I just don't think it's for me. But and I was like, that's okay. It's not for everybody, but. For my dad, I want to get him back into it.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, because when my daughter Gracie, when she brought it home, she had this little thing set up, and it was just the four of us, me and my wife and the two girls, and we got into it. All four of us got into it. We all
had you never played before then?
I played once in high school. I just stumbled upon. I was going over to a friend's house to pick something up, and he and his brother and some other friends were playing. So I sat down and played with them for an hour, maybe.
Yeah.
But never touched it again until Grace brought it home, and then my book collection started.
Now it's this, yeah. Do you play in campaigns? Did you DM as well?
I do most of the DMing at this point. Yeah. We did this 2-year Eberron thing, and when they finally killed the big bad, I had no more plans, so we just did this award ceremony, and that was it.
Oh, I love that.
And then we kind of one-shot it. You know, this was the COVID time, so we were online, and we weren't very good at it. So now we have just started another campaign.
Oh, amazing.
But this is one I've created the world.
Oh, really?
This is no books, nothing.
Ooh.
So it's we started this one, and it's going really well. It's so little combat. This group we don't do well with combat.
Yeah.
So which is interesting. So it's a lot of old Victorian mystery kind of stuff.
Oh, that sounds amazing. And see, that's the other thing I was going to mention. One of the things I love so much is the versatility of D&D, because it is not like, I think, when most people hear it, you think that very classic, like fantasy, Lord of the Rings, like
medieval kind of,
that kind of thing, which I love, absolutely. But there's so many different things you can do. And I knew my brother was part of a campaign that was doing like a futuristic like Star Wars, like where they were using lots of Star Wars like characters and things, but then they were making it all their own, and like my brother was a Jawa, and like all these things. It's just so cool. You can make it whatever you want.
Right,
like
any story,
Victorian, like it's anything.
Yeah, and I think that's what's cool about it, because you can paint your fandom over the top of a tabletop game, and, for lack of a metaphor.
Exactly. Yeah, you can. I like that. You could paint your fandom. It's so true.
Yeah. So, is there anything about this that you don't like about D&D?
Yeah. No, there is. Unfortunately, fandom actually can be part of it. Just like most everything, I feel like there is still a lot of there can still be a lot of like male domination in a lot of areas. There's still a stereotype of like nerdy women, who are just used to be sexualized, or, this, that, and the other thing. And I thankfully have never experienced that on my own. I feel like I have curated the, campaigns that I'm in, and I know the people that I play with well enough to know that's not ever going to be part of it. But there's still stuff that I have seen, and I have heard stories from people. And so that's part of the, part that I think is hopefully changing, and I have seen some change in it. And D&D as a whole, I know there's been some issues with even like racism within the like the class system, and this, that, and the other thing.
Right.
But they're always working to fix that too, and so that's great. But I mean, I think there's always going to be some sorts of issues with things that are
Right.
creation based. But again, I'm lucky enough to not have had any horror stories, but I have heard, and yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I've heard the same things.
Yeah.
But in my experience, in my YouTube scrolling, and in my podcast listening,
Yes.
I don't hear a lot of it.
Good.
And matter of fact, some of my favorite D&D creators are female. You know, and they're just cool rules people.
Yeah.
You know, and they come up with some great stuff. And I don't see it as and maybe I'm just naive or lucky, one or the other, but I don't see it as a male dominated, because, you know, my campaign, we've got a pretty even split, male, female.
Awesome. Yeah.
And, but yeah, it's an interesting take on it.
Yeah.
And
I've gone to like a few conventions and things where, I mean, there's always going to be problems at conventions, but I mean, it's one of the reasons why I think I would be nervous to like jump into a one shot or like a, you know, even just at some places in town, you know, how they do, I think I mentioned it before, like Enchantment Alley or like a couple other local stores will do like tabletop gaming nights and things. And I would be nervous to jump into anything with people that I don't know. Just because of, well,
right.
As anywhere you're going to go, but strangers are scary sometimes.
Yeah.
So
yeah, and some of those game stores are a little
Yeah.
dark and sketchy.
Yeah. But for the most part, like you said, I think that it does a wonderful job of being very inclusive, and I'm very excited to see that continue, because I do think that I think, you know, I'm seeing a lot more female-led campaigns, or, you know, like just this, that, and the other thing, and it's encouraging.
Now this, I'm going to ask you if you agree with this. In my experience, there seems to be a difference between this old. There's a different faction of gamers, especially with D&D, where there's a pile of them that stick to the rules. You know, it's the rules lawyers, it's the min-maxers, it's the guys who play the numbers and not the characters.
Right.
And then there's another faction that plays the characters.
Yeah.
You know, we're more into the storytelling, and that sounds more like where you're at.
Yes. Yeah. And I 100% think there is room for both.
Right.
You just have to be communicative and with your DM or with your party about what you're interested in.
Right.
Because I've seen, and actually like whenever I started my campaign and when my sister does hers, we have there's like this little, sheet that we found, which is like D&D consent form basically, and it asks like, are there things about horror that you don't like, are there this, that, and the other thing for when we do a session 0. And you know, for those who don't play D&D, session 0 is like the session you do like before you start the campaign, and you go over this stuff with your players and say, what are we comfortable with, what should we avoid, you know, that sort of thing. And I don't always see that. I think that's a very good thing to do. And I would encourage everyone to do it, just for your comfortability. But yes, I am absolutely way more of a role play. And it's funny you mentioned that earlier. We said that your characters don't do combat much. I am also in a campaign that I don't, gosh, the last time we did combat was probably like 4 sessions ago.
Really?
But we play for like 4 hours every time.
Yeah.
And we're just role playing. Like, we are these characters.
Yeah.
Like, and kudos to the DM, you know, she keeps us going with that. And sometimes it's nice as a DM to let your players do that, because you just get to sit back and go, okay,
let them argue.
What are you going to do? Yep. Yes, exactly.
Furiously keeping notes in your head about,
let them argue. Oh, they're going to do
that.
this.
They're gonna do, that's a good idea.
But I think for me personally, I think I struggle with players that are more the analytical side, because of the storyteller creator that I am.
Right.
And again, I don't think there's anything wrong with it. I just know personally I would have a harder time enjoying a campaign where somebody was more strict like that.
Yeah, because my group that we did the Eberron campaign, we played as strict to the player's handbook 5e rules.
Yeah.
And it was tough because there's a lot of rules.
Yeah.
And it turned out there was a lot of stuff we just didn't use.
Yep.
So we started our second campaign here, and I stripped it down. Like, here's 2 sheets of rules that we're really going to stick with.
Yeah.
And, you know, and so far we've enjoyed it more because it is more role playing. It is more storytelling. Now, do you think that this gender gap in the D&D community, is that split evenly with the old school people who play tactically versus the people who play story-wise? Yeah. Do you see that, or am I making a generalization?
No, I think there is merit behind it. I have seen, in the areas that I have seen people be gatekeeped, for lack of a better word, I typically do see that to be a little more male, more strategic, and more of the, you have to play it this way, kind of a thing.
Right, okay.
But that could just be the stuff that I've personally witnessed. And I think that everybody has that chance to do that, and everybody could make the choice. Like I think I've seen a woman be, very stickler of the rules too. It's it goes every single which way. But I think primarily, if I was speaking a general term, I think I have seen more men be more of the, I want to stick to the rules, you have to play it this way kind of thing.
Right. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because I've got one guy in my campaign, as good a storyteller is, as good as an improv guy he is. He invents weapons.
I know the guy.
Well, there might be more than one, but yeah.
Yes, exactly. I was going to say, I know that person.
So that's why I allow it. They're really creative, so I allow it most of the time.
Yes, I tend to, and I'm not the one who coined this, but I absolutely tend to play by the rule of cool. And I'm like, if you can explain to me why you think your character is doing this, or if it's just super cool, I'll probably let you do it.
Yeah, there's very little.
Yes, exactly.
We're finally to that point where, okay, here's the world. Here's who we are. That's
what
fun.
Can and can't you do? And I personally, I love to encourage my players to do stupid things because it creates wonderful stories.
Yeah.
And so much fun. And so sometimes, if they're like, I'm going to do this, I'm like, oh yeah, you can try. Let's go.
Yeah.
Like, let's see you do it.
Yeah. Our last session, we had 2 people try to ride a coffin into the graveyard. I'll leave it at that. Fine.
You're like, all right.
Roll for it. See if you do it.
I think one of the things I love about D&D is that you just fail so spectacularly. There's almost never like it's like there's that, you get the nat 1, and a lot of times there's just so much you can do with that as a DM. And it's just, I almost always turned out to be funny, sometimes it does create difficult situations, but there are challenges that your characters have to get out of.
I'm going to tell you this is one of the rules hack we use now. We don't use any kind of DC or target numbers. I found a little, I'll give it to you later, but it's just a list. When you roll this, like 1 through 10 on a D20, it's a failure.
Oh.
You do 11, 12, 13, or 14, it's a success, but with this huge caveat.
Right.
And then anything over a 15 is a success without consequences.
Oh.
But it's those middle numbers that were those ones that you usually hit anyway.
Yeah.
And so on any check, I don't make up a number anymore because as a DM, I hate figuring that stuff out.
Yes.
But it's fun because if they roll those middle numbers, yes, you get to do it, but 3 of the guards just saw you do it, and now everybody's.
And here's a little secret into my DMing, which is, again, every DM is going to be different, and this is how I'm not a stickler for rules, is that when I'm coming up with my DC numbers, sometimes I haven't come up with them until the person has rolled, and they're like, oh, I got a 12, and I'm like,
nah.
Okay, that's enough. Or like, no, that's not near, sometimes it'll be, because I like to storytell, and I'm like, how is this going to advance the story? Is them knowing this information going to get them further, or should we keep it from them so that they have to discover, they have to try harder?
Absolutely.
So a lot of it is me on the spot going, I don't want you to know this.
Yeah.
Or, yeah, sure, you can have it.
Yeah, I see that. I hated finding and making those numbers up.
Yes.
So I found this system where I don't have to.
Yeah, I like that. I like that system.
Oh, yeah, almost. Oh, so close.
Too bad, yeah.
But then coming up with the negative results is the storytelling part.
Yes. I know that's the DM's favorite part is when you fail.
Not really, guys.
Not always. I want you to succeed as much as I want you to fail.
It's just fun
It's
for
just
me.
fun.
Do you want to talk about your theater or?
Yeah,
I mean-
absolutely. I'm down to talk about anything.
Okay, well then tell. I mean, Erin is also a heavyweight here in the local theater scene.
Oh, gee. That's very kind.
That's not. That's a metaphor. How did you get into theater? I mean, tell me.
Yeah, so I was homeschooled actually.
Oh, really?
Homeschooled K through 12. Bless my mom.
Wow.
Yeah, she homeschooled. I always tell this too. 4 of us. There's 4 of my siblings, and my older brother's 2.5 years. Older sister's 1.5 years older than me, and then my younger brother's 4 years. And she did K through 12, all of us. So bless her heart, my mom's a saint. But I think it was in middle school. It would have been the very beginnings of middle school. There were some auditions for a play. And I actually didn't audition for it, but my mom found out that the homeschool community here in town was like, hey, there's theater. I think you would really enjoy this. Ever since I was a kid, I have been in front of the camera whenever the camera's around. Like, I was absolutely the person. Like, there is a literal video of me doing a dance for my mom when I'm like 3 years old. And, she's got the camera on me and she's like, oh, okay, that's really good. And she turns it away and I grab the camera and turn it back and I say, no, there's like 20 more minutes of this. Ever since I have loved to be seen.
Oh, that explains so much.
Doesn't it? So she basically like forced me into this, which is a nice way to put it, because I did want to do it, but I was very nervous at first and was like, no, like I don't want to do this extracurricular activity and everything. But she was like, you really should. You should love it. And then the funny story is that I actually performed on Parkland stage. So the very first show I was ever in, we did it with the community, but Parkland let us use their stage, and I performed in Hamlet.
Hamlet, the Shakespeare Hamlet.
Yep. And then all throughout middle school and high school, all I did was Shakespeare, because the one lady in our homeschool community, she only directed Shakespeare. She did Our Town once, but I actually wasn't part of that one. So all I had ever done throughout middle school, high school was Shakespeare. And I adore it. I actually am a huge Shakespeare nerd. Like I've
Awesome.
come into loving it. But then I started Parkland College, and I had always wanted to do like musicals and, like that kind of thing aside from a play. Musicals had always been so fun. My best friend went to Central. I saw her in all these shows, and I was just like, oh, I want to do a musical so bad. And the first show I was in at Parkland was Fiddler on the Roof. And I got the joy of playing Seidel. And I knew from like, if I hadn't left theater before, I knew from that point on that it was just going to be something I did all my life. And then ever since then I have done as much as I can, but, I do prefer musicals because I love to sing and dance and act, all
Right.
3. But plays have such a like deep, lovely space in my heart, and Shakespeare in particular, because then I did get to do a Shakespeare show with Parkland, and it was amazing the difference between like not only directors but just different sides of, there was the homeschool theater Shakespeare, and then there's like a public school theater in Shakespeare,
Right.
and like it was so unique, and I love every bit
What
of it.
what a fantastic education.
Yeah.
In terms of the arts.
Yeah, and it really taught me, I think doing so much Shakespeare at such a young age really taught me a lot about theater that I didn't really know, because we were so small that I didn't know about all these other things that had to do with productions. Like I didn't know there's like whole things you can do with lighting, and then like all these different sounds and things, because we just did it all on our own. Like we would literally bring in the lights. We would perform at a little church here in town that only had 2 sets of pews, so 3 aisles and 1 little stage. And that was where we performed every single show. So like when I got on Parkland for that, I guess besides the first one, but when I finally got on Parkland, and when I was in the theater department, when I was actually studying it, and I'm learning all these like script analysis and like all these different things, I was just like, there's so much more that goes on behind the scenes that I didn't know.
Yeah.
I
think it's funny how you describe your Fiddler on the Roof, that first moment of, because it suddenly just smacks of that moment we talked about earlier about that that one moment when it works. It's like,
Yes.
oh.
That entire show too. Like that one holds such a special place in my heart. But yeah, and I mean it's interesting because that character I related to very much.
Right.
But it was just such a wild experience to go through all of that. And I will say too, like the homeschooling that I was part of was like a very, again, religious Christian homeschool group. So there was a lot of stuff that was taken out of a lot of the Shakespeare shows
Sure.
that we never did and everything either. Like we barely ever had any romance and like there was, but barely anything that you're doing there. And then going into this secular like world of like theater, it was very much like, oh, this is like entirely different from what I've grown up with.
Was it a little culture shock there?
It was absolutely culture shock, but in the best way. Like I really think I learned a lot. Like, yeah. And it was never anything negative. It was just like, oh, I have to learn all these new things. Like
there's more.
There's more. Exactly. Yeah. And that was exciting because when I was learning about it and it's something I love, I just love to learn. Like I'm not a studious person. I did not do well in like high school and college and other areas, but in the areas that I liked, I really excelled.
You are a true art nerd.
Yep. Yep.
I got a 4.0 in theater classes and a 2.8 general GPA.
Very, very true. That could not be more real.
Yeah, after my own heart right there. Last couple of questions.
Yeah.
Other than, say, D&D and theater and the performing arts, is there some art form that you have not dabbled in that you would like to? You seem to have a lot under your belt at this point.
I do have a lot of performing arts specifically. I think I would really like to... I think I'd like to dabble more in like physical art, like in the sense of like painting or I really like clay. Like clay works, pottery.
Really?
My sister is an absolute incredible artist, anything physical and anything creative too. But she took like pottery classes and she has her own wheel and everything. And she's been telling me like, you should come try it out. It's very relaxing. And I haven't done it yet. No, but I don't know. I don't know if I'm scared or if it's just like, I haven't had time. But I do think I kind of want to dive into that kind of stuff. Maybe some digital art too. I've never really been happy with any paintings I've done. But I think there's like digital art, like with an iPad that you can do. And I like that. I like being able to kind of rework colors and trace stuff.
Yeah. I was talking to our mutual friend, Justin, and he's about digital art. Yeah. And and we got into a discussion about, is it art? Because, it's digital, and his take on it was, it doesn't matter what the tools are.
Yes, absolutely. I subscribe to that for sure. Yeah.
Now, is there an art form that you would never want to try? I mean, I'll just let you think on it. I'm not going to prompt yet.
I don't know. That one's very interesting for me because art can be so many different things. Like,
sure.
I think most everything that has to do with the arts I enjoy in some way. I bet you if you started listing some stuff though, I'd be like, oh yeah, no. But actually, it's funny. I look up and I can see this. I have never been very good with like model work, like putting together like little pieces and things. I love to look at them,
like miniatures
and things.
Kind of stuff.
Yeah. I love to look at those, but I could not like do them. Like I couldn't physically like glue things and like put them on and like that. I think it would bore me so much. Or it would frustrate me that I wouldn't be able to get it the way that I could see it in my head. I think is more so.
Yeah, I think that's any physical art form.
Yes.
I know what I want,
but it never comes out the way I want it to.
Yeah, that's true.
Yes, yeah. But I mean, other than that, I'm kind of one of those people who really likes to try just about anything once. Like there are some things there will be hard lines on, but when it comes to art specifically, you put something in front of me and I'll probably try it. I might not be good at it, but I will try it.
Yeah, I love asking this question because I thought I was going to get a list of things that people maybe compare and contrast.
Right.
nobody has given me anything solid.
Really?
Yeah, like
Are you the kind of person that would know? Like you're like, no, I would never try this or something?
again, off the top of my head, I don't know.
Yeah.
But I know there are things like I love glass. I love glass. I love to watch people glass blowing.
Me too. It's like one of my favorite hobbies to look at.
But I'm asthmatic, and I know I couldn't do it. So I know I wouldn't have the lung power to do that.
That's a good point.
Like in junior high, I went through band, and I can't do the wind instruments. Because I just don't have. So I played ukulele. And,
I was gonna say I'm
string
learning so much because I did the same. I come from a very musical family. Played piano for 10 years, but I'll still do. Actually, I took lessons, but I was never able to do like band or anything with public schools.
Sure.
So we did piano and then we had some guitar stuff, but other than that, we've done no other instruments. And I've always wanted to like learn violin or cello or trumpet or like something crazy like that. But I also get really bad asthmatic symptoms when my allergies get really bad. And now I'm questioning if I'd be able to.
Yeah. I tried a trombone for about a year.
And it just,
I just can't do it.
Yeah.
Just can't do it. So.
And I greatly enjoy glass blowing, but yeah, I don't, I do not have the strength
Yeah.
or the like, comfort to do that. Like it'd be so hot. Because there's so much heat with that stuff, and that would scare me so bad. I watch it, and I'm so amazed that they can do it. But I think about me doing it, and I'm like, oh no, no, I'm too disaster prone.
If I could get through the windpipe of it, I would do it in a heartbeat. I could care less what it felt, but I'd give it a shot. But yeah, that's amazing.
Oh, just too uncomfortable for me, I think.
Okay, last question.
Yes.
Is there anywhere we can see some of your art?
Oh, at the moment, not a whole lot. I mean, you can come to any probably Parkland performance that I'm usually a part of. I'm not in any right now. But I mean, I would say probably just follow my social medias and I'd post every once in a while about my art.
Okay.
But I am hoping to start actually a D&D podcast with some friends soon. So once we get that up and running, and we don't know if we're going to do a campaign yet or if we're just going to talk nerd stuff.
Please let me know.
We don't know. Yeah. We'll have you on if that's the case.
Yes, absolutely. Would love to. Thank you so much. This has been a fun.
And I could talk about it for hours. I really could.
Yeah, this has been great. Yeah. Like I said, I've been waiting for somebody to start D&D with me. Come on.
I really could go on all night.
Yes, this was lovely.
We'll save your audience, though.
Yeah, thank you so much. I appreciate you coming by.
Thank you.